So I'm speaking with the fantastic iZLER, who has been busy scoring two hit television shows, Revenge and Shameless. iZLER has scored many films as well, including personal favorites of mine, On the Ice and Natural Selection. Thanks so much for talking with me today. Great to chat again.
Good to talk to you again, mate. How are you?
Good, good. So you had a rather big night at the BMI Awards last weekend.
Yeah.
How was that experience celebrating, successful music with your fellow composers and, of course, being honored yourself?
Well, it's great. I mean, it's always pretty amazing to be in a room full of people that you admire like that, and never hurts when you're in a room with John Williams. Doesn't matter what you're doing, really, whether it's getting an award or stalking him.
Right.
Either are good, and yeah, it was just loads of fun, and it was. I was rather shocked to be the first award up as well, so I had no time to
Right.
get nervous about it. I was just, off my table. I had to stop eating my chicken in the process.
You couldn't get enough,
Um,
no drinks, not enough drinks before you got up there.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was a great night, man. It's always really fun, the BMI Awards, because I feel like it's the one time that we all get out of our caves for more than
Yeah,
5 minutes,
right.
and go out. And consequently, at the end, all you see is a room full of absolutely hammered, obliterated composers because they don't drink the rest of the year. All they
Right.
do is work. Um,
So
and
that'll,
yeah, it's always good value for money that night.
now I asked you this on our red carpet interview that night, but I
Mhm.
wanted to kind of explore it a little bit further. Shameless and Revenge are two completely different shows. One is premium cable, the other is
Mhm.
a network broadcast, and those two venues exhibit media differently. So,
Sure.
does working with commercial breaks and that kind of structure differ your approach versus a show that airs as one continuous
Uh-huh.
block? How does that, the spotting sessions, do they differ? Like, how does that kind of work?
Yeah, I mean it's different. The principle's different, but also the two sets of people that I work with are very different. They're very different shows. They're very different approaches to music. Shameless isn't wall to wall
Right,
music
right.
the way that Revenge is. Revenge is more like scoring a movie.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Not that movies should be wall to wall music, but there's just a lot of music, and also network shows tend to like more music than cable
Mm-hmm.
shows do. I know that's a bit of a generalization, but it tends to hold true a lot of the time.
I sense that too. Even with like Game of Thrones and big shows like that, there's very
Yeah,
less music.
yeah, exactly. And with Shameless, now, first of all, the music couldn't be more different. I mean, Shameless
Right.
is a rock band, and Revenge is a 50-piece orchestra,
Right.
so it really couldn't be more different. Um, and the commercial breaks do make a bit of a difference because especially on a show like Revenge, where you have to be very dramatic and very very sort of hard hitting, you have to do these big act outs.
Right.
Uh, it was funny because one of the writers on Revenge paid me a lovely compliment once. He said, you can make an act out of anything. We could just have a close up of a burrito for 10 seconds, and you just go dun 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 boom commercial, and it will work. So there's much more of that
Right.
in
Right.
Revenge, and there's none of that in Shameless. Shameless is just a completely different approach to scoring. I mean, they also the guys that do Shameless never wanted it to feel like a film score.
Right.
They wanted it to feel fun and irreverent and um, not like a film score, not like it's scored to picture. But ironically, the time that I do score that show,
Mm-hmm.
which isn't every episode, a lot of the time they just have needle drops.
Mm-hmm.
When I get called in, it's exactly because they need underscore because the scene's too long or whatever to have
Uh-huh.
just a song playing in the background.
Right. Right.
So inevitably, I end up. It's like scoring a movie with a rock band, basically, where you
Mm-hmm.
have to take twists and turns, but you can't be too obvious about it, and um, you can't be too overtly score-ish. It has
Right.
to sound
Right.
like a band,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
which is a fun challenge, actually.
And I mean, it's good to have those two different sides of the coin, so you can go from big orchestra and more intimate, smaller kind of scoring like that. So,
Yeah, it's great fun to do them both, and now I'm just kind of. I really look forward to finding the right score where I can really combine the two.
right.
Uh, God knows what that would be, but and I've done lots of sort of hybrid things like that before movies
Mm-hmm.
where or actually Natural Selection was a little like that.
Yeah, it
There
was.
was
Yeah. Yeah.
there was there was a bit of both going on there. There was just quartet, but That was a cool movie to score.
But I mean, I love the melodies in that score. I still remember it. I still listen to it.
Oh, thank you.
It's great.
Yeah, it was a really great movie too.
Yeah, yeah. So you're 3 seasons into Revenge now.
Yep.
How has the music evolved over the seasons? And do you approach the show like one episode at a time, or do you kind of try to create big, long season arcs? Do you kind of have the information to do that?
Well, my idea when I started doing the show was always to score it as though it was one giant 22-hour movie,
Right.
for a season. But that becomes a little impractical for a few reasons. One, you don't see the whole movie in 22 hours. You see, or at least I see an hour at a time, and I get very little time to score each episode. So
Right.
it's kind of thrown at me, and then you just have to go. But in the practical sense, you can sort of, as soon as you figure out a theme for somebody, I do read ahead a little bit in the scripts to see what each character is going to be doing. If they become a major character and sort of warrant having some sort of a thematic thing happening in the series, then it's worth developing something. And I know they're not going to get killed off the following week or something. Right. Sometimes that can be fun to throw a red herring out.
Yeah.
And I think the only reason the score ever expands and contracts is because the story does the same. So, the story this season got pretty big and then started getting narrowed down very quickly towards the end. And I have a feeling next season it's going to be very streamlined. So, I just follow what the story does. And if the story gets bigger, so does the score, because it sort of has to follow what's going on.
Mm-hmm. And you score with you mentioned a big orchestra every week.
Yeah.
And I know television scheduling is incredibly hectic, especially on a network show that's 22 episodes long every season. How long do you have to put everything together from start to finish for each episode?
On a good week, I have, if I'm lucky, and this is rare, I would get, maybe 8 days, 9 days, but that's rare. Most of the time, I get more like 5 days, maybe a week. And when it gets really rough, like it did with the finale, inevitably it's the big episodes that I have less time for, because they have to spend so much time on visual effects and cutting, so many fine plot points together that inevitably I get no time to do those. So I've had to do a few episodes in 3 days, which was pretty rough.
Wow.
I did the big boat episode, 214, which was incredibly fun to do because got to do that whole SOS motif and all of that stuff. But that I had to do in 3 days. And then the finale, in fact, the finale and the episode, the 2-hour finale and the episode before that, so the last 3 episodes all scored in the same week.
Wow.
So the last week was a bit of a killer, but
how much sleep do you get? How late are you in the studio till?
Oh, I don't sleep, Kai. I don't sleep. You pick the wrong profession if you're planning to sleep to be a film composer.
You can sleep when you're dead.
Pretty much, yeah. Just hopefully not anytime soon.
Right. No, absolutely not. So Shameless, of course, is on a completely different spectrum, and that kind of deals with a very dysfunctional family. And just kind of looking at your personal life and you've become a father recently, right?
Yeah.
So has that? That clearly changes your view and priorities and dynamics and all that on life and your personal life. Does that reflect to your approach as a storyteller? Maybe not just with Shameless, but just looking at things differently? I
think it does in general. The funny thing is, I remember having a conversation a couple of years back with my principal viola player about being a dad, and he's got 2 kids, and saying. I don't know. I don't know how to approach this thing. And he said, it makes me a better musician.
Yeah.
And I said, way to sell it to me, man. That's pretty sneaky. I like that. That's very good. Basically, I think to me, it's not like it directly affects the way I tell stories or write music. I think what it does it makes it incredibly hard for me to watch things that I was much less sensitive to in films before. I can't ever watch anything with kids getting hurt or anything. I just can't deal with it. So I find that stuff much harder to deal with. But, if you're scoring a film when something like that's going on, you have to watch it. And I think it makes you more sensitive to what you're going to write. So maybe that's what he meant. In that sense,
Mm-hmm.
I think it does make you a better writer and a better musician, because everything about being a composer, and certainly everything about being a film composer, is about feeling.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's about watching what's happening and about how it makes you feel and how you want the audience to feel. And the more sensitive you can be to that, the better it's going to be. So in that sense, it's actually helped.
Well, that's cool. I mean, it adds more to your, I guess, repertoire of stuff you can draw from.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and the thing is, the funny thing about being a film composer is you have very little time to live life, because it's an all-consuming job.
Mm-hmm.
And, at the end of the day, you need to live your life. If you're going to write any kind of decent music, you need experience to draw from.
Right.
Not just musical, but you need something of yourself to put in there to have a voice.
Right.
So, all these things help, man. And, apparently that's why we're here. Not to score movies. We're here for that stuff.
Right. Absolutely.
I'm just figuring that out.
So, looking at television dynamics, they're a bit different than on a film, at least with the behind the scenes and the roles and everything. You're working with many directors and writers and producers.
Yeah.
So, who do you collaborate the most with on a TV show? Who is helping you execute that creative vision? Is it the showrunner? Is that really who you go to?
Realistically, on a TV show, it's either the showrunner or their sort of second in command, and there tend to be executive producers and an associate producer that usually have something to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, on a TV show, you deal very little with directors unless you're doing something with, for instance, a pilot with a big movie director. Revenge was a really good example of that, working with Philip Noyce.
Right.
I actually just did a pilot on CBS as well that got picked up, called Reckless, which Catherine Hardwicke directed.
Mm-hmm.
So in those instances, I'm collaborating with the director a little more than I usually would on
Right.
TV. The rest of the time, it's pretty much the producers. Often the writer, if there's a writer-producer who, has a hand in how the show is run, they often have something to do with it. But other than that, with something like Revenge, it's consistently the producers, but I also get to know, by now I've gotten to know the actors, the directors, the effects people, everybody, and it's sort of a big family affair. But really, it's the same group of producers every week, and it's the same with Shameless. The other person that I often collaborate with is the music supervisor, because where there has to be a seamless transition between source music, needle drops, whatever,
Right.
with score, you need to have that pretty tight, and the music editor is really important in that too.
Yeah, of course.
On movies, it's the other way around. On movies, it's all about the director.
Right. So at this time, in your career, you're definitely deep in the world of television.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any favorite TV shows of yours from the past that you grew up with, or even in the present, whose music really stands out to you, that you love, that inspires you?
God, yes, tons. I mean, if for different reasons. I mean, you can't knock the sort of old school Mike Post sort of 80s stuff, where they wrote so many great themes. I mean, it's funny because they're so 80s and they're so TV, like
right.
but they're so great, in their own ways, because he wrote such great melodies. There's a lot of TV shows around now that I think are really pretty impressive. I think there's just the level of, with using live orchestras and using a lot of movie composers too that understand scoring, that I think have taken out of a lot of TV shows, the kind of typical TV scoring, the bookending scenes, not really having any music during a scene, but then having music to take you out of one scene into another, and you get these sort of 10-second cues that don't really do much other than kind of wallpaper the cracks. That seems to be going away much more, I think, and you get much more interesting scoring. I think some of what Bear McCreary does on Walking Dead is great.
Absolutely.
I think, God, trying to think. Now, of course, you've asked me, my mind's gone blank. But I tell you who I think is really great. I think Nathan Barr is really talented. He does some really great work on not only True Blood, but there's a show he's doing now called The Americans.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Have
yeah,
you
yeah.
watched that? Oh my
I
God,
have
that
not
show
seen the
is
show though, but my friend
oh
is very into it.
so good. Show is so good.
Hmm.
I've of course I got tons of episodes to catch up on because I've been working,
Right.
but that show is awesome, and he does some really great stuff.
Well, I mean, I think it definitely changed just looking, and not just with TV. I mean, I grew up playing video games too, and I've noticed that
Hmm.
across every medium now, the scores are becoming more prevalent, more prominent, and since the technology is getting better,
Right.
and their music is needed more and more. So
And more cinematic. I think it's
yeah, yeah.
people because I honestly think people have been striving for that in TV and in video games since the beginning, and as especially in video games as the technology's gotten better, as you said,
Hmm.
and the animations become much better and the visuals have gotten much better. It requires really great sound to bring you into the reality of it. I mean, if you took the Call of Duty games or or even more, if the Battlefield series, those games, the sound design on those is so good.
Oh yeah.
If you took the sound out, you're still left with the graphics still aren't there to the point where you could just watch it like you would a movie and it looks really realistic. The sound really has to put you in the space.
Absolutely.
And I think the same goes for the music.
Well, I'm out of questions for you now, but
There you
thanks.
go. I've never seen you at a loss for words before.
We've been talking so much recently, but you've thank you so much, iZLER. It's
It's a
always
pleasure.
a pleasure to chat with you, and
Likewise.
I just love talking with you and picking your brain. So we can definitely do this again
Sounds good to
sometime
me.
soon.
All right, man. Take it easy.